everybody. I'm Lucia Masarova from MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, Texas, and I'll be giving you some highlights of the American Society of Hematology 2023 that just recently occurred in San Diego in December. So this year we were quite excitedly waiting for a couple large phase 3 results on myelofibrosis, where there were two studies that were presented, unfortunately, back to back, but some of us managed to come to both of them and see them in person, that everybody were highly expected. They were actually a frontline phase 3 placebo-controlled, blindly randomized studies of newly diagnosed patients with myelofibrosis in intermediate 1, 2, or high risks that were treated with ruxolitinib or Jakafi, which is a standardly approved medications for these patients in combination with the novel agents, which I will talk a little bit about, versus the drug on its own and placebo. So again, it's a randomized phase 3 fashion, possibly going for approval. And there were two studies. One investigated adding of something called pelabresib, which is a bromodomain inhibitor, bromodomain medications, epigenetic, that could possibly work beyond the JAK pathway and enhance the activity of ruxolitinib that we have seen in the previous phase 2 studies. And the other one was called navitoclax, which is BCL2, BCL-XL inhibitor, kind of similarly working in the same fashion beyond the JAK pathway, possibly synergizing and improving the efficacy. So both of these drugs were investigated against placebo in two large phase 3 studies, and the results of both of them were presented in the oral sessions. I like both of them actually look quite similarly in terms of providing excellent benefit for control of the spleen. In these studies, we standardly use assessment at 24 weeks and measuring how much the spleen is shrinking from when the patient started. And both of these studies show that combination in newly diagnosed patients could lead to almost twice as high spleen reduction than single agent ruxolitinib. That was fantastic. However, the symptom assessment, which is used generally across patients with the standardized MPN scores, were not so impressive in terms of doubling the results. So the pelabresib showed actually quite in a subset of analysis with intermediate risk patients, marginal improvements in the symptoms, but not such a staggering p-value or staggering difference that we have seen with the control of the spleen. Similarly, with navitoclax and ruxolitinib versus single ruxolitinib, we have seen not significantly improved symptoms. So here we actually have a very exciting results on one point, and a little bit of, we don't know what to think about the results of the symptoms, because symptoms and spleen were always used historically for approval of JAK inhibitors in myelofibrosis patients, except for the last JAK inhibitor, momelotinib, that was approved on symptoms and anemia benefit. However, here we are actually moving into a new era of non-JAK inhibition only. And we have to start questioning, are we using the right endpoints? Are we using the right endpoints at the right time? What does actually matter? Are we going to see more than just symptoms and spleen down the road and actually altering the disease, which is the intention of these medications to be added to Jakafi? So that actually not only gave us some preliminary results, but also opened up the field to a lot of movements, discussions, and possibly design of the future studies. Similarly, so we had some nice compounds. They are rolling into the field and providing some preliminary, very promising, exciting results, including launching phase 3 studies, such as export inhibitor selinexor. That's also going to be evaluated in combinations with ruxolitinib. And those are actually very similar fashion. Spleen symptoms, but also what can we do behind? What can we do more in terms of altering the disease behavior? And there are coming a lot of the more promising and exciting results about cytokines, alteration of the fibrosis, seeing something more deeper than just the standard spleen and symptoms. Then from that similar terms, we actually have seen a couple interesting updates, long-term follow-up, or post-hoc analysis of currently approved JAK inhibitors and the comparisons, how the nuances of the use could actually help us to use these JAKs the best. What I like as well was not on a field only on myelofibrosis, but we have exciting data on patients with PV, for example, with the frontline Ruxobit study, which is a German cooperative group study that used a frontline JAK inhibitor, ruxolitinib, that is currently only approved in a second-line setting against basal therapy in patients with PV previously untreated or maximum treated for 6 weeks. And there were actually preliminary analysis shown at this ASH that told us that although very strictly defined complete remissions was not superior yet at this pre-point analysis, but the combined composite endpoint with the complete remission plus partial remission, as well as very relevant points such as control of symptoms, particularly itching or fatigue, and control of hematocrit were superior on ruxolitinib. And again, there was only preliminary analysis, so we are all excited and looking forward to what's the longer follow-up of this study going to show. This one included only about 78 patients with Polycythemia Vera, so we may need to see more. But there are already data from last year's about the MAGIC PV and a couple other data that we actually are starting to look into. Can we place this agent somewhere else and only on second-line setting? Interestingly, so we haven't this year seen any significant data on, for example, the most exciting topic about carlaticulin, because last year plenary session had the monoclonal antibody anti-carlaticulin that is currently moving into clinical trials. There's already trial open in Australia. There's trials open in the United States enrolling patients. So that is, as you know, about 1/3 of patients with ET or myelofibrosis would have a driver mutation called carlaticulin. And we have learned that actually that is an immunogenic mutation. It is expelled on top of the cell. So we have resources to develop monoclonal antibodies to attract this abnormal target and hopefully down the road in the future, modify the disease or even get rid of the carlaticulin so there will be no driver. So we may be moving into modifying the carlaticulin mutated patients. Why I'm saying this is this year actually very similar approach we were waiting for was in terms of a JAK2, which we finally are hopefully developing a JAK2 specific inhibitors, because the current JAK inhibitors are type 1. That means they are non-specific. They are binding to mutant as well as the wild JAK. That's why we have not 100% responses. That's why we have toxicity, and that's why we have resistance. However, now we may be actually on track of developing JAK2 type 2 inhibitors, which will bound on the mutant allele burden and hopefully will again work the same way, eliminate the malignant clone in patients with any MPNs. So that is something exciting to look at, and everybody was actually liking to see when this one going to move into clinical trial. In terms of the carlaticulin, not only the initial monoclonal antibodies being developed, but there were also data on anti-carlaticulin and engaging immune system, something we call BITE, which is a bispecific monoclonal antibody, which not only binds to carlaticulin or the target, but it also binds or basically attracts T cells of patients that could deliver the get rid of the carlaticulin and actually engage the immune system and possibly then teach the immune system to help us fight this disease. So that was something very exciting, and we are going to be looking at it and seeing what we can get from it. Interesting data, very interesting data were presented by the group from UK, Claire Harrison, about young adults, which was a retrospective study that actually looked at median age of 20 years. Very young population of patients with ET and PV, so Polycythemia Vera, Essential Thrombocythemia, that were treated with various regimens. And then one, they outlined why these patients are treated, and then second, what agents they used. And clearly, the biggest message of this study was the patients treated with interferon. So again, we are moving into the field of interferons, which we already seen approval in Polycythemia Vera a few years ago, these patients had significantly lower rate of transformation to myelofibrosis at 20 years marks. So there were not so much differences in thrombosis, which is our primary goal early decades after the diagnosis of ET or PV, but the most actually dreading complications, especially if patients are diagnosed at a young age, is progression of the disease into myelofibrosis, which was significantly slower on interferon compared to everything else these investigators done. So that is something very interesting and opening up the field and the future, where we know that currently the approved interferon is indicated even in low-risk PV patients. And there has been a lot of ongoing debate. Why do we treat these patients? Why do we risk the toxicity? For how long do we treat them? And so forth, so on. However, these data, alongside others that we already seen, actually gave us some ideas about maybe we should do something more, especially in patients that are very young. Similar kind of like fashion came from a 60 months update of DALIA trial, which was again phase 3 study that was conducted comparing interferon alpha-2b, alpha-2a, and hydroxyurea. But that included various patients with MPN, not only ETPV. There was also a small group of PMFs and prefibrotic MFs, and gave us some updates on the 60 months, where particularly patients, they were able to tolerate interferon long-term, had significantly decreased allele burden, so they achieved deeper and better molecular remissions, as well as hematology control. Interestingly so, bone marrow responses in this study were higher with hydroxyurea. So something that we have to also follow and creates a little conclusion. But the most striking things from this one were discontinuation rates. They were quite high of interferon. Therefore, that's why I said only patients they were able to maintain and tolerate, and these were low doses of interferons. So that speaks towards we have now a novel compounds of interferons and better drugs. There we might need to focus our investigations in to spare the side effects, allow patients to continue drugs longer, and maybe only then we will see the benefit that is going to be sustained.
Hello, everybody. My name is Meredith Manning. I work for Pharma Essentia, and I'm the president of the Americas. Pharma Essentia is a fully integrated, growing biotech company. And I wanted to really thank David for inviting us to join you all today. We are proud to sponsor MPN Cancer Connection, as we know it's such an important resource for the entire MPN community. Just to give you a little background, at Pharma Essentia, we've been an essential partner in the MPN community really for over 20 years. As you may know, we have an FDA product that was approved for PV back in November of 2021. And we would encourage you to learn more about the product, both the dosing, efficacy, and safety, and the profile of our product at pharmaessentia.com. I wanted to share with you that we have 2 clinical programs which are currently enrolling for patients. One is the Eclipse PV. This is a clinical study that we've started in the US and in Canada. And it's a really critically important study as we're looking at evaluating the new dosing regimen compared to our current dosing regimen, which is approved by the FDA. Our second clinical study is EXCEED-ET, and this is a clinical study also happening in the US and in Canada. And this evaluates the potential of a new investigational ET therapeutic. Information on the study can be found at eclipsepv.com and exceedet.com. Your stories and experience are what drive us every day to do more. I would like to spend a couple of minutes sharing with you some resources that we've been very dedicated to create over the past year and the past couple of months. So I'm really excited to share with you the first resource, which is called the PV Pod, Stories from the Marrow. This is a podcast that will feature voices from the PV community, both clinicians as well as patients, as well as other advocates. And hopefully we can get some caregivers in there to share their information. We've heard over and over again that it's really important to have forums like you're doing today in order to be able to connect with other patients, with other caregivers and clinicians, to stay informed and feel really empowered to take action in whatever MPN that you might be experiencing. Second, I want to share with you that we have a resource which goes into PV specifically. It's called What's Next PV. This is an online resource to help you better understand areas in which you might be experiencing during your PV journey. So please visit whatsnextpv.com and take a look. Finally, we know what's really critically important is as you talk to your care team about what treatment is right for you, it's really important that us as manufacturer provide you additional resources. So we have Pharma Essentia Source program. It is a resource for patients who have been prescribed a Pharma Essentia therapeutic or a Pharma Essentia treatment. The source provides personalized services, including access and payer navigation assistance. We look forward to continuing to advance treatments for even more blood cancers in the MPN space. I thank you profusely for your support and your partnership, and we are proud to stand alongside you in this powerful community. So thank you, David. Thank you, everybody, and warm best wishes to all of you. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Kristen Griffiths, and I work on the public affairs team at Insight focused on MPNs. I'm very pleased to be here today to represent Insight, and I would like to thank David and MPN Cancer Connection for having me and giving me a few moments to speak about our company and its commitments to patients. A little background on Insight. Insight is a Wilmington, Delaware-based biopharmaceutical company committed to making a difference in the lives of patients through scientific discovery. Rigorous science is at the core of everything that we do to develop, discover, and deliver novel medicines that will meet the serious medical needs in oncology and other diseases. We are committed to providing better outcomes to patients through the medicines that we develop and the education that we provide to support the community. One of our most important commitments is to ensure that the appropriate patients may have access to the medicines that they need. For this reason, we have developed a patient program called Insight Cares to help support patients and healthcare providers access their prescribed medication. For eligible patients, Insight Cares offers prescription drug verification, prior authorization support, free drug and copay assistance for those who qualify under the program's terms and conditions, as well as ongoing education and support from a representative. Patients who have concerns about access to their prescribed medication should contact Insight Cares for assistance. Information for patient access can be found at www.insightcares.com. Once again, that's insightcares.com. And we highly suggest that eligible patients enroll in Insight Cares even if you don't think you will need access initially. Circumstances can change, and if an eligible patient is enrolled, we will be able to provide the individual assistance more quickly if needed. Regarding clinical trials, we are currently enrolling in clinical trials for MPNs. If you're interested in clinical trials, please contact your healthcare provider. Detailed information about Insight's clinical trials can be found at insightclinicaltrials.com. Once again, that's insightclinicaltrials.com. We strive to enhance the patient community to integrate an authentic patient voice through our initiatives. Partnerships like the one we have with MPN Cancer Connection have really been key in helping us understand the unmet patient need and caregiver needs, including disease awareness, and also providing a true authentic voice in the MPN community through the materials that we create. We host a website called voicesofmpn.com where we provide access to MPN information, patient stories, access to information on MPN community events such as Facebook Live programs, patient meetings, podcasts, and also a symptom tracker. So I highly suggest that you check out voicesofmpn.com to see that information. And in closing, I just wanted to say thank you again so much for giving me a few moments to speak to you today. Programs like this allow Insight to utilize our resources to help improve the lives of individuals impacted most on the diseases in which we work. So thank you so much and have a great day.
Hello, my name is Elsa Levita. I'm Director of Patient Advocacy at Morphosis. It is a pleasure to be here today, and thank you to David and the MPN Cancer Connection for the opportunity and partnership. Morphosis has one FDA-approved therapy, and our pipeline consists of investigational cancer medicines in mid and late-stage development. This includes pelabresib, our investigational BET inhibitor. Pelabresib is being investigated in the phase 2 MANIFEST study in combination with ruxolitinib, a JAK inhibitor, in patients with myelofibrosis and as a monotherapy in patients with myelofibrosis and essential thrombocythemia. Pelabresib is also being investigated in the phase 3 MANIFEST-2 study in combination with ruxolitinib as a first-line treatment for myelofibrosis. Pelabresib is an investigational, orally administered small molecule, or in other words, a pill, designed to inhibit the activity of a family of proteins called BET proteins. The BET family of proteins is an emerging potential therapeutic target that can modify the underlying drivers of disease in myelofibrosis. JAK inhibitors, by influencing the JAK-STAT pathway, have already been approved to treat myelofibrosis in intermediate and high-risk patients. Combining BET inhibition and JAK inhibition in preclinical studies suggests the potential for the two to act synergistically to alter the underlying disease process in myelofibrosis. MANIFEST-2 is a global, multi-center, double-blind, randomized study comparing pelabresib in combination with ruxolitinib versus placebo plus ruxolitinib in patients with myelofibrosis that have not been previously treated with a JAK inhibitor, otherwise known as JAK inhibitor naive. A double-blinded study is one where neither the patients nor the researcher knows which treatment the patients are receiving until the clinical trial is over. MANIFEST-2 has recently reached full enrollment and is no longer recruiting. More than 400 patients in MANIFEST-2 were randomly assigned to two groups of equal size. The first group is receiving pelabresib in combination with ruxolitinib, and the second group is receiving placebo plus ruxolitinib. Understanding that spleen enlargement reflects myelofibrosis disease activity and can cause significant pain and/or discomfort for patients, the primary endpoint of the MANIFEST-2 trial is the proportion of patients who achieve a 35% or greater reduction in spleen volume 24 weeks after starting treatment, known as SVR35. Since we know that people living with myelofibrosis can experience severe symptoms that may diminish their quality of life, we designed the study so that the key secondary endpoint of the MANIFEST-2 study is the proportion of patients achieving a 50% or greater improvement in the total symptom score, as measured by the Myelofibrosis Symptom Assessment Form version 4.0, 24 weeks after starting treatment, also known as TSS50. As we release data from the MANIFEST and MANIFEST-2 studies, we will work closely with the MPN Cancer Connection to ensure regular updates on our studies are shared. The top-line data from the MANIFEST-2 study will be available by the end of this year. As a reminder, pelabresib is an investigational new drug not approved by any regulatory authority, and there is no guarantee that it will be approved. At Morphosis, we are honored to work with patient advocacy groups like the MPN Cancer Connection serving the blood cancer community. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today.